Hey everyone, welcome to Surviving Darkness with Heather and Jenny, and this is episode 8. Episode 8, yay, that's good. And so things didn't go as we had planned today, which was fine. We had a family member that was going to come and talk with us today, on here. And, well, the enemy does his thing, and so she was not able to come today, and we understand that. So we're just going to talk about a few different things that we have been thinking about over the past few weeks as far as like what we've done before. So we're going to kind of go over some of the things that have affected us over the years and just different circumstances that we've heard about or read about that people have gone through, like the same thing that we did. And just for instance, what we're going to talk about today is just little, and they're not little things, but things that have carried over the years that still affect us. Like, I don't like to be in a room with the door shut anymore. Like, it bothers me. It used to not bother me, but for the past, I would say 10, 15 years, I thought it was my dogs, because I always had a Jack Russell, and she would, every time I closed the door, she would get mad and come and scratch at the door. And so I started leaving the door open for that, just so she wouldn't tear the carpet up or the door up. But now it's gotten to the point that if I'm in there by myself, I don't like the door shut. Like, it bothers me to have the door shut. And I think that's because when things were going on, we had to have our doors shut.
Right. I don't like small spaces, period. Mm-hmm. I don't like to feel closed in, and loud noises, especially in a small place. Mm-hmm. Like when the kids were growing up and they'd be wrestling in the back seat and be loud, it would just send me into like a panic, sort of. But I would lash out like in anger because it's like that fight thing kicks in. We never really have the option for the flight.
Right.
So it's an automatic fight thing. It's like, you all have to be quiet. Mm-hmm. I can't deal with the loudness in small spaces. It overwhelms me.
And I think it's because it was so controlled in that little space, like in our bedrooms and things, whenever all of this was going on, that if you had to, like you said, we had to listen for everything always. Like you would talk, you and I had talked about before we started recording, you always had to be in tune to everything to figure out what direction what was coming from, or if there was something else or somebody else walking up, that you had to be listening to everything. And just loudness, it's overwhelming.
And you can't hear those quiet things if everything's loud. Like we were talking about earlier too, like when we're in a restaurant, that sometimes can be overstimulating for me, because where we have tuned in so much to noises, hearing footsteps, trying to distinguish, is that a person or is that something else coming this way? Where's it going? Like you said, what direction? And just always being in that heightened sense at all times, that like when I'm in a restaurant, I hear all the conversations going on around me. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for me to focus on who I'm with and what we're talking about, because I hear every single conversation.
Yeah.
So I become overwhelmed, because it's like all these conversations and voices all at one time filtering in. Mm-hmm. So, and we were talking about how we position ourselves. I want to be sitting to where I can see who's coming through the door. I want to be prepared if anything is going to happen. Like with my job going into people's homes, I wanted to be positioned too where I could get to the door if something should arise. So yeah, we can't just go and enjoy ourselves when we go out somewhere, because we feel like we're always in that fight or flight.
Yes. And when we were going through everything, we had no control over anything. You know, it was, this is how it's going to be. This is how you're going to be in, you know, in your room or in the car, wherever the bad things were happening. This is what you're going to wear. This is how you're going to be positioned. And everything was out of our control.
Right.
So when we're in places like that, where it could possibly be something happens, we have to feel like we have at least a little bit of control should everything go crazy again.
And I think that sometimes we've taken the control thing to a different level. And that is probably a lot of the reason for like the disintegration of my first marriage. The second marriage, I can't say that, but the first marriage, yeah, because I had just got out. I went straight from living at home to being married. So I really didn't have any time to adjust from being in a place where you're controlled to a place where you're an adult and make decisions. So a lot of times I took things as my husband, ex-husband, but he was my husband at the time, as trying to control me, when actually it was just suggestions. So that makes it a little hard. And I've learned over the years to, sometimes people are just suggesting things. They're not trying to control what you're thinking, how you're feeling. But at the same time, when I would try to explain why I reacted the way I did, I don't feel like there was a lot of compassion for the reaction. It was like not a lot of understanding of why I reacted that way.
Because it had already reached a point, like a high point, you know, like already gotten into an argument or whatever. Because I do the same thing. You get offensive like right off.
Right.
Because somebody is trying to control what you're doing.
Right. And we tend to take things that are said in a maybe a normal tone, but in our head, it's not such a normal tone. It's more of an accusatory, demanding tone to us,
Yes.
which we just tend to blow things out of proportion. And our anger, at least me at that time in my life, I've mellowed out a lot, but it was like, it was either you were calm or you were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There was no in between. And then I would feel so bad because of how I lashed out, because I was like, it's not his fault that I went through all this stuff. And I mean, it was years. It's taken years. I guess in my old age, I've mellowed out some. But
it's almost like, listen, you know, and I'm guilty of this too. And my husband, we've talked about this. It's not right, but it is how I do things. And I'm like you are. I'm working on it too. Basically, don't tell me what to do. If I feel like you are trying to control me or tell me what to do, I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to put you immediately. You have just started blasting me, and it's not going to happen. You know, so no. But then sometimes we just automatically go into that, like you said, that mode. You know, I'm trying to suggest something to you. I'm not trying to tell you something. Well, you were. The way that you said it, and because of everything that happened, we didn't have a choice then. It was, this is how things are.
right.
How it's going to be.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter what you say. It is what it is.
Right.
And so now we're not in those circumstances. And it makes us feel like we're being put back in that position. So this is just some of the things that still affect us in our minds.
I feel like too that how we reacted to things, for example, like when my feelings were hurt, I didn't cry and say, you know, you hurt my feelings. I lashed out in anger instead of our feelings just, we weren't able to express our feelings the way normal circumstances would allow you to express your feelings. We didn't learn, or we weren't able to cry. We weren't able to show emotion. We weren't able to show fear. We weren't allowed to do anything like that because it supposedly gave that thing more strength. Mm-hmm. So we held like all this anger inside, all those emotions inside. So then when we were out of that situation and out of those circumstances, we had to learn how to express our emotions. Yes. Because they were so screwed up. Mm-hmm. So that was a lot of my problem. When I got my feelings hurt, I just automatically went into fight. Mm-hmm. It was like, no, you're not going to hurt my feelings like that. But instead of saying, when you said this, you may not have meant it that way, but this is how I felt it. This is how I heard it. And it hurt my feelings. It was more, I can't believe you said that, and claws were out.
And it's not just you and I that are affected that way. We have other women in our family who have gone through, like the one that was going to come over and speak today. She has said that same thing, that you hurt me and I'm just ready to fight, because if you get me to the point where I am upset and I'm crying, you've embarrassed me for one. And, so I guess, we just all of us that have gone through that feel that same way, because I know her and another one of our family members is the same way. I've said the same thing,
And I don't know if it's because we're out of that situation and we are able to fight now, whereas before we didn't have a choice. Yeah. That's our reaction. Mm-hmm. It's like, we're going to fight about this.
And it wasn't even just with the thing that we dealt with. It was everyday life. As teenage years are hard enough, right? Period. Without anything else going on. And, your hormones are crazy and you're up, you're down, and all this other stuff. And we weren't allowed to talk about any of that stuff with just a normal conversation with our parents. It was not allowed.
Right.
What's going on? What are you feeling? It was not, because if we wanted to talk to mom, because we were having, woman issues or something like that, or feeling something different, we weren't allowed to talk to her because we may end up saying something that would allow everything to come out. So we were never really given that chance to express what was wrong with us, our feelings, aside from what we were going through with this thing. Right. Just as normal people. We just weren't allowed. We weren't able to do that.
Even our conversations with friends was analyzed. Yeah. What you should have said, what you shouldn't have said, mm-hmm. and everything else. And it was overwhelming. And you were talking about teenage years. Teenage years are hard enough, mm-hmm. like you said. But then when you grow up poor, mm-hmm. pretty much, and you just waited for the neighbor's yard sale to be over so that you could have the leftovers that they didn't sell, and those were your new clothes for school the next year, when you really didn't have money to even buy like the $3 pair of Bobo shoes. Mm-hmm. So you went around with holes in your shoes or shoes that were too small and things like that, and you never really fit in, and you're a teenager that don't fit in. I was very shy. And then add that was going on within the home on top of it. It was a very hard time, mm-hmm. very hard. So I think that after I was able to finally start expressing how I feel and starting to realize I'm an adult and things like that, it was really hard for me to make that adjustment to where I'm responsible for not only having children and being the mom and a wife and all that, but I'm also responsible for how I react to things.
Right.
So it was just a big change. And then when you're married to someone and you, like, I guess we had only been married maybe 2-3 years, and you hadn't really opened up about the things that had happened to you. And when you finally do, and the person looks at you and said, well, if I would have known all that, I may not have married you. That made it really hard to stay in that marriage and to not get angry every time something was said, because I felt rejected. Yeah. I felt that rejection.
I told because I was married once before a long time ago, and I told him one thing when we were dating, and one thing that had happened when I was very little, and the guy that it happened with, I was like 4 or 5, and the guy that it happened with was like 16 or something like that. And my ex had said, how in the world did you let that happen? You should never have let that happen. Not, oh my gosh, that's sick. Why would somebody do that? No. So I get what you're saying.
And those reactions are sort of why we've waited so long. And then I was thinking earlier too, that, a lot of people knew our dad. Mm-hmm. And he was one that was respected by a lot of people. I mean, he had his run-ins with people because he was one that he sort of wanted it his way. Mm-hmm. So he did have a lot of run-ins with people. But I was thinking too that, I'm sure we're going to run into people that are going to be like, yeah, that was not how your dad was at all. Mm-hmm. But then, the thought came to me, what person that is that kind of person portrays that in public?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, are they going to wear a shirt that says, hey, I'm evil?
Yeah, exactly.
I do this and I do that. Nobody advertises that out in public. They have a persona outside the home and one inside the home. So, I mean, my response to anyone thinking, there's no way they're like that. What pedophile, what abuser of his wife, what person actually goes out in public and acts that way?
Right. Yes. Yeah. They don't wear a sign that says, here, this is what I do at home,
Right. And there's no look.
No.
I mean, some of the most prominent people and the ones that you would think would not do that are the ones that do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're not going to go out in public and advertise that they're not the kind of person. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's one thing that I was like, I'm not really worried about other people's opinions, whether they think that what we're talking about is true or not. I know it is, and everybody's entitled. Yeah. They can think what they want. It's not going to change the fact that I'm still going to talk about what happened.
And I had talked to Mom about this the other day. There was a couple people that Dad had become really good friends with when he worked at the hospital, and Dad absolutely loved them, and they loved Dad. And they may be the ones that are like, I just don't see that, because he talked about his girls all the time at work, talked about his girls, and that's fine, but they didn't live with us at home. And it was such a weird dynamic, because when I worked at the same hospital in a different department, it was just across the hall from each other. And there was like one day a week we would see each other because we were on different shifts, but I would still go over and give him a hug and things like that, because I had moved out at that time, and things were different. But what we went through never came up. We never talked about that. At that time, none of that had come up. So it was still just kind of, I don't want to say like playing the act, because I'm not that way. Like, I don't give people hugs, but, or I'm not fake. We're not fake. But at the same time, he was still our dad, and we loved him. And it's just very different to see. I don't know what I'm trying to say, like how to say it. It was just
how I described it last night when I was speaking to our pastor's wife, Bishop's wife, that it was almost like a savior complex. He was if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we said anything, he would wind up in prison and that thing would kill us. And it was almost like he had us believing he was our savior.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was considered daddy's girl. I went with him everywhere. And it's years and years of being told, I'm just trying to protect you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep you alive. I'm just trying to keep you safe. When all of this stuff is going on and you have a hard time distinguishing in your head, how is this right?
And it was like you were with him all the time. You did get, 3 cars bought for you, and I'm not saying this jealously. I'm talking, but people also don't know that was kind of like, because this is happening, I'm going to do all of this for you. So what I'm doing is not so bad.
And for how it looks outside the home.
Yes.
I love my girls. I'm going to make sure they've got what they need to go to college. I'm going to do this. And even going to college, it wasn't an option of, do I want to go or don't I want to go? It was, what are you going for?
Yeah.
And then I had plans to become a lawyer. So my first degree was in business administration with a concentration in business law. So after that degree, I wasn't able to go somewhere else to college because I would have had to leave the home. And it wasn't, I had to sort of pick something else to do.
I would have loved to. I played softball for the College of West Virginia because it was in Beckley. I would have loved to have gone, and I love that. I'm not saying anything about that. I loved that time and even being able to travel and stuff. But there were times that I wish that I would have been able to go try out and maybe gone to WVU or even just Tech down the road. But that was not an option because you would have had to stay on campus there.
And we tried that. I tried that for a week.
And Dad went crazy.
I mean, it was the call that, Heather, you have to come home or your dad's going to wind up killing himself. He's drinking, he's taking pills and all of this because he was no longer in control. And all these thoughts were going through his head. If I didn't answer the phone when he thought I should answer the phone, if I was at the student union shooting pool or doing something like that, it was, she's in trouble. Somebody's hurting her. Something's going on. And that thing followed her. Or that thing's doing this or that thing's doing that. So I was only gone for a week. And I'm honestly, I loved being gone that week. I actually had a week of peace. So, I get
at home.
Right.
It was horrible at home. Absolutely.
And then
horrible
I was even told, when you come home, you're an adult now. You can go places, you can do whatever. And that may have lasted 2 weeks. And then it was back to, don't talk to that person. You're not going out. You're not doing this. You're not doing that, because I had to be controlled again.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's stuff that affects you your whole life. And then both of us have the fibromyalgia. And that is more than likely from being in the high stress over a prolonged period of time, PTSD. So, it's not just a thing that you just get over.
And we were talking about our spouses, and we've said this a gazillion times on here about how you and I are at different spots, different places. Well, my husband and I have always had a really good relationship. We used to never fight at all. It'd be like, okay, hold up. This is kind of getting loud. We're going to walk away. We're going to come back. And now, and it's a kid, you throw that in and it does stress,
Yes.
more stress, but it was kind of starting before that. And I have realized the past, I'd say few months, that I've really needed to start working on stuff because I am more at the anger point now. And that's why I decided I needed to get therapy and everything, because I do snap really easily. And that's also because I'm actually trying to confront everything that happened. Before, I didn't. It was just like, yep, it happened, whatever. It's in the past. I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. It's done. It is what it is. And now it does come up and even subconsciously affect how I react to things. So, yes.
And subconsciously, we can be, I'm going to speak for both of us because I'm sure you're the same. We can be having just a normal time. We can be sitting in a room by ourselves, be perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden, these thoughts come and you're overwhelmed and like almost in a panic. And you're like, where did that just come from?
Yeah. And you're just done. Like when I get like that, I'm just done. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want to be by myself. Like, I just want to be by myself. I have to just
I can be by myself
process.
And still throw myself into a panic attack. I can be sitting there by myself, nothing going on. Nobody has said anything. Nobody's done anything. And I can just all of a sudden just feel like I can't breathe. Like, what in the world? And then all these thoughts, like here lately, it's been financial stuff. You're going to lose everything. And you're never going to be able to work again. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to do anything. And like, we're working on selling a house, and I just put something out there, that in the near future, and we get slammed with all these messages of people interested. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, that's cool. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like, well, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to sell a house. You don't even know where to start with this. And then I'm in a panic again. And it's just, and I was fine. I was sitting there fine, not thinking about anything. And then all of a sudden, boom, you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
What are you thinking? And of course, for that split second, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I thinking? I've got like a list of people and I don't even know where to start on this. I've never sold a house. I don't know. So it's like, I can be perfectly fine. Nothing going on. No one has said anything to me. And then it's almost like I throw myself into a panic attack just out of nowhere. And then I have to talk myself down and be like, you know what? I know where this is coming from now. But at first you wonder, I mean, you're not expecting it. And that's when the enemy comes at you, is when you're least expecting it. Just like today, we weren't really expecting to do this today, but at the same time we were, because every single week he comes at us with something. So we're always ready, but not ready to, if that makes sense. I mean, we have stuff we can talk about. We've gone through stuff for many, many years. So there's plenty that we can talk about.
Yes.
We just didn't pinpoint exactly what we were going to talk about today. But I mean, you didn't sleep last night. She didn't sleep last night. I didn't sleep last night. So it's like, I know the days that we're going to record, that we're going to get hit. Every morning, every Friday morning, I am hit with something that throws me into like total chaos before it releases at noon on Fridays. So I know it's coming. The thing is I don't know what it is, so it still affects me. Right. I don't know what's coming, but I know something is coming. And we've done this. This is our 8th episode. Every single week, we've run into something. So nothing surprises me anymore.
Right.
We know that there's going to be an attack. It doesn't want us to get the word out. Satan does not want us to be able to reach anybody. He does not want us to be able to help anybody. He wants us to stay silent. Because when we share our testimony, we are not only freeing ourselves, but we're giving people the opportunity to realize that they're not the only person out there.
Right. And I don't know what it was, if there was something you just said in there, but I was just thinking about maybe when you're talking about selling the house. Anyway, it just hit me that when we were growing up, and we always had somebody living with us or helping out somebody, but there was always people living with us. Most of the time it was dad's friends or, family, something like that. And we don't do that very much at all.
Right.
And even, Mom has said, I don't want people living with me anymore. And I think that is also because well, of course, we've learned things about people over the years, and you just are, whatever. I just don't want that drama and all that crap in my house. But I think it's also kind of our protection.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more that you have intimately in your house, the more open you are to being hurt or to something happening. And I know I don't mind to help anybody out. That's not what I mean. I don't mind to help anybody. But I don't always want people in my bubble. Like just don't, you know.
Right.
I mean, like I said before, I have a ton of friends. I have very close friends. But I just don't want to have that many people that I'm too close to because of the things that you go through and we've gone through. You know, you have to talk to them about things if you would say something, or if something would come up, or if you have a freak out moment and they don't know what had gone on, then you have to explain things, you know.
Right.
So,
and the rejection, I think,
mm-hmm.
It's that you've been vulnerable around someone, you've let them close enough to you, and then something happens and that whole relationship is just gone. It's like it's like a loss. It's like a death.
Yes. And now where we are with our spouses, that's something kind of I wanted to talk about too, because your first one was a great guy. You know, you, like we've said, you guys are good friends and everything, but that doesn't mean that you're a good married couple. You know what I mean?
Right.
It just doesn't.
We're better apart.
Yeah. And
we get along
there's
better
nothing
apart.
wrong with that. You know, I mean, I'm just saying, your husband now knew our dad all of his life. All of his life he knew our dad.
Right.
And he was the greatest to everybody, you know?
Right.
And mine didn't know my dad for a long time, but he knew my dad for several years before everything came out, you know? And so he didn't have that to mold his brain at all about him. Yeah. Yeah. And so they both liked our dad. But now, you know, now that we're married and things have come out and you've been able to talk to yours about everything, and mine knows more now because he actually lets me talk. He doesn't necessarily say anything, which is fine. He doesn't have to say anything. Sometimes it's just letting, you know, having someone let you get something off of your chest or explain why you just exploded on them, and them be like, well, I didn't like that you did that. I understand why you did that, but let's not let that happen again. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, still holding me accountable for just blasting him, you know, but at least there's a reason behind it, and he understands that and lets me get it off of my chest as to why, and then we talk about it. And to me, that's a big thing, to have somebody now that we can actually speak about things and it not be our fault, you know, for what happened.
Right.
What you let happen. Or like you said, well, if I would have known that, I wouldn't be with you. And that was said to me, well, if I'd have known that, you know, why would you let that happen for?
It's almost like that was the demise of the marriage.
Yeah.
That one sentence, whether it was meant or not,
mm-hmm.
and even an apology couldn't erase the hurt that one sentence caused.
I did not speak about mine anymore whatsoever. I did not. We had not gotten married. This was prior to us being married. And I answered one question. I don't even remember what the question was. And I answered one question. And he didn't even know the worst of the situation with everything that had gone on with my dad and other people. And he never, to this day, knows, or unless he would somehow hear this, you know, he would never know what happened, because after what he said on the phone at that time, I was like, no.
Right.
I will never talk to anybody about this.
You shut down.
Yes.
But really, I mean, honestly, is there any reason to go any further?
Mm-mm.
Is there any reason to talk about it anymore to someone who
No,
doesn't want to hear it?
No.
And they're just going to look down on you with every little sentence you say after that.
And my husband now we were talking about this podcast, and I said, he was having some issues with getting it to play. And I said, well, let me help you figure that out. And he was like, no, I'm fine. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen. And to somebody else, that might have made him mad, for you don't want to support me. But I get that. I do. And that's totally his prerogative. If he does not want to listen to that, that's fine.
Right.
If you don't want to listen to everything that your wife has gone through because it makes you mad,
yes,
and there's nothing that you can do about it now, but it affects you still,
right,
that's okay.
Right. And that's how my husband is now.
Yes.
He gets mad about it, not at me, but he gets mad over what I had gone through and that he wasn't in my life at that time to protect me from that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about, I have known him pretty much
forever.
My whole life,
mm-hmm.
but we've been married almost 3 years and I'm just now at the point that I feel safe.
Right.
I owned a house before we got married. He owned a house before we got married. And we're actually talking, which we're in the process of selling the one that we live in now, which is his, and fixing up the one that I own to sell it. But before, there was no way I was going to get rid of my house because I wasn't secure. And he didn't do nothing to cause that.
Right.
I wasn't secure enough to let go of my, what's the word? Safety net.
Yeah, your security blanket.
Yes, if everything fell apart,
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have that safety net to fall back in.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've come to the realization that we're in it for the long haul, and it's safe to get rid of those things and us build together.
Right.
Find what we want together.
And kind of, I guess, going on that topic, Mom has said, there were things that happened before any of this ever came out, like with her marriage, and she said, I should have never stayed as long as I did. Never. I should not have done that. And she said, for one, it was a different time. For then, you got married, you stayed married, it didn't matter. You were getting crap beat out of you, whatever, it didn't matter. You stayed. They cheated on you every day with somebody different, didn't matter, you stayed. And, so she stayed home the first little bit until I went to school. Then she started working. And she said, I felt like I just didn't make enough money to be able to support us. When in all reality, she was the one that did make the money and support us. And she would have had support had she wanted to leave. And, so she didn't come out and tell us, girls, you will have a job where you can take care of yourself. Because you're not going to be stuck in a situation. But because of things that happened and things that we saw, it made us determined to be able to make it on our own if we have to.
Which sort of, I think, causes some issues in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to be vulnerable. And you want to, it's sort of, I don't want to say an arrogance, but it sort of is. I don't have to put up with this.
Yes.
I can take care of myself. And I think that sometimes that is I don't know exactly how I want to word it. It deters you from actually trying to work on the problem sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because, fine, you don't want to be here? Go.
Right.
I can take care of myself. Or, I don't really want to talk about this because I can take care of myself.
Yeah.
We don't need to resolve this issue. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be fine on my own. But actually, you're not. I mean, the hurt is there.
Right.
When you leave that relationship, the hurt is there and you're not fine.
Mm-mm.
You're never fine.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I've been divorced twice and you're never fine. I mean, the first divorce I did not want, and it was devastating for me.
Right.
The second one, I had gotten to the point I was counting down the days.
Right.
For the divorce to be final.
We all were.
I was literally counting down days. I got 2 more weeks until my hearing. I've got 1 more week until my hearing. I got 1 more day until my hearing, and then I'm done with this.
Yes.
I'm just done with this because it was so horrible. Mm-hmm. But the first one, I mean, when I got married, both times it was with every intention of staying married.
Right. But
there's some things that you can try to work on for 13 years. And there's some things that you're done with before 3 years is up because it's just, no, I'm not tolerating it.
The second one was like pure evil. I mean, there were things that went on, and we need to talk about that in a different.
It would be a different episode. That would be a whole episode.
Yes, because there were things that were brought into your lives, you and your kids' lives, that at a very vulnerable time for you and your kids too. And Satan saw that and was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And that's what happened. And it tore your family apart for a couple years. And thank goodness you all are, back to being a family and everything. So
Satan is a master manipulator. And when people operate or are operated by him,
yes,
they are master manipulators too. Mm-hmm. So we'll leave it at that with that subject for today. We'll just with that one.
Yes.
And just move on with what all we were talking about before that.
Yeah.
Just the things that have affected us in our daily lives. And
I was talking about whenever we were talking about the restaurant and stuff like that, the way that my office is at work, normally we're there by ourselves, but there's so many offices around us that doesn't scare me. It's weird to be the only person in there working, because normally it's not like that at any place. But I have patients that come in and out all day long and everything like that. So when I'm actually in the room doing their x-rays, being back there doesn't bother me to be by myself. But in the waiting room, we have like this little half door, and most of the other coworkers leave that one open to just come in and out of. I can't. I have to lock that door. They can come into the main office, into the waiting area, but that is my protection, is just locking that half door, even though it's really not that much of a protection, but in my mind it is.
They're supposed to be in the waiting room.
Yes.
That's where they're supposed to be. And even though that's a half door that they can reach over and unlock, mm-hmm. That they're supposed to be in the waiting room. And if that door's open, they can come into your space.
Yes.
Uninvited, unexpected.
Yes.
And that's the things that we can't have trouble dealing with, the unexpected. Like I was talking to the bishop's wife again last night about that. I said, they're like, when you call and say, hey, do you want to go such and such, or do you want to do this? If it's not something I can think about and prepare for, my automatic word is no.
Right.
Because I'm not ready. But if it's like, hey, tomorrow, do you want to do this, or Thursday, or next week, I can say yes, mm-hmm. because I have time to prepare mentally that I'm going to leave the house and this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. But if it's, hey, I'm going to come pick you up right now and we're going to go such and such, I have a hard time with that.
And see, I guess it's funny because I don't allow myself time to think about it. I'm just like, yeah, let's go do that.
My automatic reaction is no.
Because a lot of times, if I have a lot of time to think about things, I think we're kind of opposite in that.
Because, I stay at home.
Yeah.
And you're busy
like
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I'm more of I'm safe at home. I'm good at home. I'd rather just stay home. So when you ask me or someone asks me to do something spur of the moment, I have to step out of my comfort zone. And it sends me almost into a panic, anxiety, just that thought of not preparing and just throwing my shoes on and going out the door.
And I do better being busy because I get depressed. I've said this, and people don't see that because I smile and this stuff all the time, but you don't know what somebody's going through on the inside.
No, you don't.
If I'm home and I'm not busy, I don't do well. I really don't, because I'm there with my thoughts. I'm there just to lay on the couch and sleep and not do anything, which is not productive for me, which does not do good for me mentally at all. It just doesn't. And so I don't like being alone with my thoughts. My husband works a lot. Well, I have, a kid now, and, it's different, but before it was just he and I don't like to be there by myself a lot of times.
I'm a stress cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an angry cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
When I get upset, when I get stressed, when I get anxious, I clean. So being home is good for me. But the last couple months, whatever, that I haven't been able to is when the enemy has really come and attacked me, because I can't get up and do the things that I would have normally done when I became overwhelmed or anxious or depressed.
And mine is just shut down.
Right.
If I get overwhelmed, stressed, really mad, I am done. I'm just done. And I want to be alone. And I don't want to have to deal with anything. So, yeah.
And I'm a right now type of person too, as far as wanting to get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess maybe it's where we have the fibromyalgia, and there's days that we feel like we can't even move. And those days that we feel like we can get stuff done, I want it done.
I don't claim that fibromyalgia.
Well, okay. But anyway, it's still there. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I here lately, it's like I've had to depend on other people.
Yes.
I can't move the furniture. I can't reach way up high and grab stuff and bring it down. I can't climb under the cabinets and pull everything out. I can't get down in the floor because I can't get back up. And I've had to depend on everybody, and it's taught me some patience. It's been difficult, but it's teaching me that I'm just going, I can't be in control of that.
Right.
That I've got to depend on other people, and that is so hard.
Mm-hmm. That
is like really hard for me. And I'm home all day. I'm used to working. I'm used to being out. I'm used to working. So I'm here all day and I see stuff that needs done and I can't do it. And then I got overcome with like the anxiety and just the thoughts that normally I could just ignore by staying busy doing something, even if it's something small. So the last few months, I've really had to learn not only a better trust in God, because right now that's definitely all I have. He can make a way when it seems like there is no way. And I have to keep reminding myself that. And I've learned that I have to be patient, not just with other people, but I have to be patient with myself. There's some things I can't control. So I can't be getting all upset. If I went by emotion all the time and didn't remind myself of who I am in Christ, I would go crazy. I would drive myself crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't have that ability to work off that energy, that anxiety, that kind of stuff. I sit and brew in it. People don't really realize the effects of trauma, whether it's just a one-time thing or if it's a prolonged period of trauma. But those things really affect people their whole lives. So that's one of the big reasons that we wanted to continue doing the podcast and sharing the things that we've gone through, because people may not understand that the reason that they react with anger or why their actions don't really line up with whatever the circumstance is at that time. It's because of how we've learned to deal with trauma And the things that we've learned have to be unlearned, and you have to eventually learn a productive way to deal with things. So that's why we sort of wanted to touch on today the long-term effects and the things that the trauma has caused in our lives. So just keep in mind that you can reach us. We have our Facebook page. You can send us a private message if you have any questions, any concerns, just want to talk. We also have a web page where you can just look up Surviving Darkness Podcast, and it'll take you wherever you need to go. It's got the links for the Facebook, the Instagram, all of those right there on the website. So we're easy to reach, and we would love to hear from you, feedback, what you do like about the podcast, what you don't like about the podcast, the things that you may want to hear about, things that you might want us to expand on, even if it's just a message and you want us to talk individually to you about those things, or you have anything that you want to talk about that you think maybe if you spoke to someone who's been there, not necessarily like on a podcast, but just one-on-one, and just need that person to talk to, we're available. So we'll just finish it up for this week, and we'll have another one ready for you next week. Have a good week.